All right, guys. So this week we're talking about mount attacks, the second week of the curriculum. Last week we were talking all about escapes and staying safe from bottom. This week we'll start to mount some offense on our partners. So we'll specifically be looking at the cross collar choke, using that to elicit a response, one or two responses from a beginner perspective. One would be to reach up and grab the arms to try to defend the choke. The second one being to push up on the partner's chest to prevent them being able to grab onto the collars, at which point we'll attack a spinning armbar. Um, I think that from a beginner perspective, this is one of the main arguments as to why it's fantastic to start training jujitsu in the gi as opposed to no gi. From a realistic self defense perspective, if you're mounted and you have your elbows tight to your partner's hips and you've got good frames, and you're not bridging and bucking and getting hands to the mat like we were talking about in last week's instruction, you're definitely going to get punched in the face. Now, to keep happy training partners and make sure that people want to train jujitsu for the long term, we obviously don't punch each other in the face in jujitsu. However, we do use the collars to choke. And I think the collar chokes in jujitsu from the dominant positions like mount and back control and side control really do a good job of replacing what would be strikes in a self defense situation. So we'll use the collar chokes similar to how we would in a self defense situation. We cause a response of the person on the bottom. Some of the old school Gracie challenge videos, you would see guys come in and they would actually just smack them in the face from top mount position to elicit a response so then they could attack either a back take or an arm lock, etc. And that's a similar thing to what we're doing with the collar chokes here in this series. All right, so starting with the cross collar choke, X choke, whichever you like to call it. Cross collars, probably more traditional. You'll notice that I open the lapel with my non-choking hand to start. So I'm right-handed, so I'm going to insert the right hand into the collar. So I'm going to open with the left hand. Right. And as I slide my fingers into the lapel, I'm searching for the back of my partner's gi. There's oftentimes a tag there as a reference point. But in any case, I'm shooting those fingers as deep as I possibly can behind my partner's neck. And I'm also grabbing onto that lapel and pulling upwards to ideally lift my partner's head off the mat. That's going to clear me a little bit extra space. Obviously, if I don't lift my partner's head off the mat, I'm going to hit the mat with my fingers, not be able to put my grip as deep in that collar. Okay, once I've got my grip set, I'm going to take all the slack out, pulling that lapel with my left hand in this case up towards my chest, taking all the slack out, and then setting my grip firmly in place, placing my fist back onto the mat. So once I've set my grip in place, I want to look to make sure that I have correct positioning with my forearm. I'm turning my palm up towards the ceiling to make the inside of my forearm contact my partner's artery on the side of the neck. He has an artery on both sides. We're going to look to attack both, but setting the first one in place, really turning the palm up towards the ceiling, is going to make sure that that first 2 inches or so of the bone in my forearm is in contact with my partner's neck. If I'm not making contact with the artery, there's no way that I'm going to get a proper choke. So you'll notice as I start to attack with the other arm, I bring this elbow down to my partner's shoulder and I bias my weight heavily over his left shoulder in this case. The reason why I do this is you have to anticipate the fact that because I've taken away my post on the right hand side, if my partner were to do a nice strong bridge over his left shoulder, I no longer can post out with my right hand because I've committed it deep to this collar choke. This means that I'm susceptible to an easy bridge and roll escape from my partner on the bottom. So I bias my weight heavy over my left shoulder to prevent my partner rolling me over my right shoulder. I bring that elbow all the way down to the mat first, and I get my chest nice and low, extending my weight up to my partner's shoulders. And then I'm slowly walking that elbow around my partner's head. The whole time, I'm aware of the fact that I can be easily rolled over that right shoulder if I don't have a good base of support. So I'm bringing that all the way around to the other side and wedging my elbow tight against my partner's neck. But you'll notice that my hand is off on that 45-degree angle, giving me some protection against that easy bridge and roll escape that my partner could attempt. I'm wedging that elbow hard against my partner's neck. And as I start to attack the choke in the next step, I'm going to essentially grind it up across my partner's face. Keeping in mind here that the collar choke is supposed to represent punching your partner in the face. So even though this is a little bit of a grindy technique, might leave your partner with a bit of a rug burn, it's a heck of a lot better than getting punched in the face. And it teaches our partner the importance of keeping moving and keeping my hands distracted while in bottom mount position so that I'm not able to attack this choke. So, as I mentioned, I wedge and grind that arm up my partner's neck and set my grip in place. You can actually see my partner starts coughing right now because the choke is extremely tight. Typically, I can even get this choke without even setting the second grip in place if my setup is really strong. Um, what I'm aiming to do is keep this palm down, facing downwards towards my partner's shoulder the entire time, so that the opposite side of the arm, in this case the outside of the forearm, is dragging up and setting into place on my partner's carotid artery on the opposite side. All right, and then I'll set the grip. I just take a grip on the top of the gi jacket. It doesn't have to be anywhere specific. It's essentially as I bring that elbow back and up my partner's neck, right underneath the jawline, wherever my hand falls, I just take a grip there. Right, when I feel that the last 2 inches or so of my forearm is in contact with my partner's carotid, I'll take a grip wherever it happens to land. If that's a little bit more towards the back of the gi, towards the front of the gi, or directly on top of the shoulder, it's not a super specific grip. I'm just locking it in place. All right, as I go to finish the choke, I square up with my partner and I'm pulling my left elbow downwards while I slightly pull the right elbow upwards. Okay, and then as I bring my forehead forward towards the mat, I'm going to pull the elbows back as if I want to set them on either side of my hip. Right? Most times, I'm not going to make my forehead all the way down to the mat before I get the tap. It's a very, very strong setup, especially against a non resisting training partner here. Sometimes you'll have to go all the way down, forehead to the mat, and then drawing the elbows back. You're almost thinking of your arms like a pair of scissors around your partner's neck. And if you close the scissors, obviously there's no opportunity for blood flow to continue to the brain. Just for reference purposes, here's a quick clip of what it looks like if you fail to tap to a cross collar choke. So if I was in a self-defense situation and I have mount position, first thing I'm likely to do is start throwing some punches if it's a serious situation. So that we're going to represent that with our cross choke. So I start attacking the cross choke on my partner, and he reacts by grabbing my wrist. So as often as possible in Jiu Jitsu, I love these jab cross combos where I attack one thing, bait them to do the correct thing per se, and then capitalize on it. I'm going to use a 2-on-1 grip here, and I'm going to go palm up, palm down. The reason I do this is because it's an incredibly difficult grip for my partner to escape from. He can't push or pull or turn his wrist out of this grip, and I've got very good control on that one arm. All right, and we do martial arts so that the little guy can beat the big guy. I drop my body weight over top of my partner's wrist on a 45-degree angle. It's a very weak angle for my partner's shoulder, and I'm committing my entire upper body weight against that rotator cuff. Extremely difficult to defend. Very easy for me to drop that weight down and pin my partner's wrist to the mat. You'll notice that I also do a little switch of my grip. I go palm down with my right hand in this case. And then finally, not to be overlooked, I wedge my right elbow against my partner's jaw. One of the common defenses to the Americana is to turn to face the Americana and pull the elbow in tight to the body, making it very difficult to finish. If I use the back of my tricep almost like a wedge or a cross face on my partner's jaw, it'll prevent him from turning in easily and allow me to work freely to attack the arm without him intervening or pulling that elbow in, causing me any trouble. Now, it'd be a shame if I got bridged over to my right hand side by my partner while I'm working here. So I keep my chest low. I'm not sitting up tall. You'll also, as a side little note, notice that I didn't extend my arms and push my partner's hand down towards the mat. I really used that body weight. That's also going to keep my center of gravity low and make it difficult for my partner to hit a well-timed bridging escape, just knocking me over the opposite side. So now that I have my partner's wrist isolated and their head isolated with that wedge, I slide my other hand underneath the arm and connect to my own wrist. I rev my wrists. Some people call it revving, but anybody who's driven a motorcycle knows that that's not revving. So I say turning up towards the ceiling or goosenecking my wrists to take all the slack out of the system. You could practice this with your partner. Try not turning the wrists up to the ceiling and see how freely your partner can extend and move their arm around just using strength. And then take all that slack out by turning the wrists up towards the ceiling and then have your partner try again. It's very, very difficult to move the shoulder, move the arm, extend the arm, or cause any issues to the person attacking from the bottom perspective when you have those wrists turned up to the ceiling. So that's a very important detail to get a good finish. You'll also note that I'm using monkey grips here. So my thumbs are not involved in the grips. I'm just hooking my partner's arm. And finally, I'm keeping the back of his hand pinned to the mat the entire time throughout the submission. It gives my partner significantly more range of motion if I allow him to pull the back of his hand off the mat. Now, there are two elements to finishing the Americana. One of them is linear motion, and one of them is rotational motion. When we get comfortable with both, we'll start to attack them at the same time, but it's nice to break them up into two pieces to understand the mechanics individually. So linearly, I'm going to keep everything in place and start to move, in this case, my left elbow down towards my left knee. So I'm moving in a linear fashion, bringing that arm downwards. Oftentimes against typically men, you're going to get a tap just from the linear movement. You don't even have to add any rotation. As soon as I add rotation, I start to lose control. So I prefer to try to finish the submission just with linear motion first and then add rotation. If I get to the extent of my linear motion, I've brought that elbow all the way down to my knee, and I still haven't got a finish on my partner, then I'll add some rotational motion by lifting, in this case, my left elbow up off the mat and bringing my partner's elbow higher, creating a rotation of the shoulder joint. Now, to combine both of them together and get a very, very strong finish, I slide down and rotate at the same time. That'll give me the strongest finish, and I'm imagining that I'm trying to take my partner's hand and put it underneath their own elbow. But this requires some precision in keeping the back of the hand on the mat the entire time, keeping good pressure on the side of my partner's jaw using that reverse crossface with my tricep. So I would recommend as a beginner trying to finish your Americanas in 2 steps. Start with the linear motion downwards, see if you can get a tap. And if you can't, when you hit the extent of the range of motion, then you start to lift for the finish. So I just love this armbar. I think it's one of the coolest selling feature arm bars in Jiu Jitsu. When you have a beginner and bottom mount, and you say, hey, stop pushing up on my chest, stop pushing up on my chest, keep your hands safe, like we talked about in the first week, and they just keep pushing up, and then you spring this rat trap on them. It's pretty spectacular. So, a great tool to add to the arsenal. I like teaching this more so because it benefits the person on the bottom. It's a very quick way of learning to not overextend your arms as a player on the bottom. So even though it's super fun to do as the person on top and it's a very legit attack and it's a great way to learn the fundamentals of attacking an armbar, I view it more as a lesson for the person on the bottom and a way to teach beginners to keep their hands safe and avoid that temptation, which is there to push up on the chest and get your partner off of you. So we're going to start this one just like we did the Americana. Again, I'm in mount position, self-defense situation, probably going to be throwing some form of strikes, especially if my partner is very aggressive and I can't reason with them. Usually if I do that, partner is going to react a couple different ways. Last one we talked about, okay, they grab my hands or they grab onto me in some regard. I can attack the Americana. In this scenario, a very common reaction is to push up on your chest. Again, in Jiu Jitsu, if I'm just pinning my partner, I might drop my chest down onto them, and that'll elicit this reaction as well. So it's not exclusive, but this is a very common thing to deal with when you're working with beginners in Jiu Jitsu is the push up on the chest. All right, so we start attacking our trusty cross collar choke, and the guy who bench presses 250 on the regular is not having anything to do with it. So we're going to set up our spinning arm bar here. So I go palm, or I should say thumb up, thumb down. You'll notice that my right hand, right, the one that I'm right-handed, I'm going to attack that arm with my right hand. So I go thumbs down. The way I teach the kids how to remember this is thumbs down for the person on the bottom. It's going to be a bad time. He's about to get arm locked. So the arm with the thumbs down is the one I'm going to attack. Also note that my arm is over top of my partner's. So I'm going over with my right and I'm cutting under with my left. My left thumb is thumbs up. All right, that arm is happy. It's not going to get armbarred. I know it's a silly way of representing it, but it does work to help remember which one's which. So from here, I'm going to lean my weight forward heavy into my arms. So I'm pinning his shoulders to the mat. The purpose of this is to take the weight off of my hips and my legs so that I can move them freely into position to attack the arm lock. So you'll see me leaning that body weight heavy into my partner's shoulders and then starting to slide my knee up. Now, I was a little bit more eager than I would have liked. In watching these videos back, I kind of wish I would have slowed this down just a little bit. But again, it's one of my favorite arm locks, and I like just blasting into the position. But obviously, as a beginner, we're going to take this a little slower. So the idea here is that I'm sliding my knee up behind my partner's shoulder line. Right? I want to block my partner's shoulder and get my hips behind my partner's tricep. Okay, so it happens a little bit fast here. I wish I had a better video, but it is what it is. We'll deal with what we've got right now. But I would, if I was teaching this in class, show this as a couple different steps. The first step being that I slide that knee up above my partner's shoulder line so that I'm blocking behind the tricep with the hips. You'll notice my other foot, I go knee to the ceiling and plant my foot on the mat. So I don't want to dwell on it for too long, but I am really not super happy with my video here that I took. I went way too fast, and I didn't break this up into enough pieces, but it is what it is. So we continue. What I would show is bringing that right knee up above the shoulder line, wedging behind the tricep, and then leaning my weight heavy back towards my partner's legs. That's going to make my right leg light so that I can take the weight off of it and swing it over top of my partner's head. While I'm swinging that leg over top of my partner's head, once it passes my partner's head, I'm going to lean my weight back center to take the weight off of my left foot so I can slide that heel up and under the far side armpit. Now, I'm going to change views here to give you a better angle, but watch how I hug my partner's arm with my right arm, trying to get the crook of my elbow around my partner's wrist as I drop. Now, when I land, my hips are tight to my partner's shoulder. I've got good control of my partner's wrist with his thumb up towards the ceiling, just using the grip of the crook of the elbow around the wrist. Now, I can reinforce that grip and reach up with my other hand, my free arm, my left arm in this case, and control the bottom, the meaty part of my partner's thumb, turning that thumb up towards the ceiling. I'm not super happy with how much of a pinch I have with my knees in this video. So if you're watching, make sure that your knees are nice and pinched together to keep that arm very controlled and to keep your partner's shoulder under control so that he can't just easily slip that elbow out of place. Obviously, in this video, I'm sort of jumping into the armbar. This is more of a spinning armbar than it is a more traditional and controlled armbar. But keeping those knees nice and pinched to prevent an easy escape is very important. Finally, to finish the submission, keep the knees pinched, keep the hips tight to your partner's shoulder, and maintain that thumb up towards the ceiling while I slowly lift the hips up while gluing my partner's hand and wrist to my chest. You should get a relatively quick finish, especially if this comes as a bit of a surprise to your training partner. So just in closing out the video, I want to note that we don't cover in this video the warm-ups that we normally do, which cover grapevines and positional control from mount, that are equally important, but very difficult to say just teach, because they require practice against some resistance. Usually I would put you on top of a partner. I would say, okay, let's look at grapevines. Let's look at underhooks. Let's look at arms wide, chest low, strategies for wrist gripping, etc. But those are all very difficult to teach per se. They're very situational depending on how the partner reacts. So as I always say, videos are a fantastic resource. Class and mat time is really what's going to make you better at jiu-jitsu. So hopefully this is a great reference for everyone. But otherwise, I look forward to seeing you guys on the mats.